Welcome one, welcome all. I am back after 2 weeks being away from you guys. It was a very sad 2 weeks, but I'm happy to be back on a Saturday night. SNYDER, I'm joined by, the Nebraska fan who I didn't even get to talk crap about, against Ohio State, even though Nebraska really contended there for almost won the game against Ohio State last week, and then obviously fell a little bit short today. And then Drew, how are you doing, man? It's been 3 weeks since I was last on a show with you.
Yeah, doing good. It's wedding season apparently, so.
Oh, that's right.
Doing good. Ready to get back into the grind with you guys.
Yes, sir. SNYDER, we were going over some weather concerns. I mean, I think let's just go ahead and just tear the Band-Aid off on weather real quick. Give people what they're looking for. What are the spots with a little bit of weather this week? So that way we're heading to this 12-game slate knowing which games are affected by the rain.
Yeah, it looks like Green Bay is going to see a significant amount of rain. It sounds like heavy rain at times during that game. It should be, I think there's around 80% chance of rain throughout the whole game with some winds too, 25, 30 mile an hour wind gusts in that game as well. So something to keep an eye on. And Seattle, looks like there's a slight chance of rain in Seattle as well, right around 30, 35% chance of rain in Seattle as well. So just a couple things to keep your eye on. Both afternoon games, 4:25 Eastern kickoffs on those two.
Yeah, it's nice because, obviously weather can change in the next 20 hours or so, but those are two very popular games. And not that, I think wind obviously plays a bigger factor than rain, but if it's going to be windy in Green Bay, like that's going to kind of put me off the game just slightly. You can see the total dip tomorrow, right? Like that's something to pay attention to as we get up to lock. And obviously with Seattle too, even though I'm less concerned about Seattle and more concerned about that Green Bay game. We have 12 games to get through. So I will stop the dilly-daddle and I will go ahead and just dive into this 12-game slate. We'll be using SaberSim.com for the game order. So if you guys do want to track, you can sign up for SaberSim and use code RPS15 in the process as well. We have a lot to talk about, and let's go ahead and dive in head first. SNYDER, I'm going to start with you. Commanders at the Giants. The key thing about this game is, there's no one really projected for double-digit ownership as things stand. However, Tyrone Tracy has won that starting running back job there in New York. He's taken it right from Devin Singletary. You got a guy like Malik Neighbors projecting for under 5% despite dominating the NFL in targets. There's a couple spots here on the Giants side that I'm more interested in than the Washington side, SNYDER. What do you think?
Yeah, this is an interesting game here. I think there's some rumblings even out there of potential benching again for Daniel Jones if things go south in this game. I think there's a couple of pieces in this game I do like Malik Neighbors at 7,500. There's a lot of value on this slate. I think Malik Neighbors at sub 5 or 10% ownership or whatever he could be. I think he's got a huge ceiling in a spot like this where Washington has been attackable throughout the air, basically throughout everywhere. Their defense has been allowing some points. Last week, Neighbors had 13 targets, caught seven of them. Kind of underwhelmed in that game. The last two games since returning from injury has kind of underwhelmed, but I think this is a spot where he can kind of go overlooked and kind of put up one of those ceiling type games. We see one of those 25, 30-point games that he put up earlier in the season. Wan'Dale Robinson, his price tag starting to creep up there a little too much for me. I don't think I can play him at that price tag. I like playing him more when he's in the mid 4Ks. I mean, he was a great play there, but approaching 6K now, that's a little too rich for my liking. You could even play like a little mini with like a Neighbors McLaurin. I don't think anyone's going to go to McLaurin either. Both of those receivers have high upside, but this isn't a game I'm like really trying to stack too much. I do like those two pass catchers, but I'm a little leery on playing Jones, and there's some other quarterbacks I'd rather play over Daniels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, when I was looking at, earlier in the season, we were always talking about how Washington's a spot that you want to target, right? And I think that's still the case, even though it's the Giants. And if I'm not mistaken, the game that Malik Neighbors absolutely went off, the first time he went off in his career was against the Washington Commanders, right? Like he just absolutely nuked all over the place. And I'm sitting here again, Drew, and I know he was like 5,900 that slate. Now he's 7,500. I'm sitting here. I don't care who's quarterback. They're feeding him the ball. Daniel Jones is going to feed Malik Neighbors the ball. Under 5%, he might be my favorite play on the slate, Drew. What do you think?
I'll tell you what, I think there's several guys in this game that have not hit a ceiling yet, and I think you could stack up a couple different ways. It's probably not going to stack up the Daniel Jones side too much, but certainly Neighbors. The volume has been pretty strong. He's been over 10 targets, I think, all but one game this season. I do like the Washington side, and I'll probably be running it back with Neighbors, to be honest. So I think McLaurin's the other guy that hasn't had a ceiling yet, and his volume hasn't actually been as high as I would want. And I actually think that's a good sign when they start getting him a few more targets, and I think he actually can boom for a slate. But yeah, I do like Neighbors. 7,500 is fine. I've done a lot of stacks with him and Wan'Dale Robinson with Daniel Jones. I probably will avoid that tomorrow, but I think I'm going to play the Washington side and run him back with Neighbors. So it'll be, I've been trying to get talked off of Jaden Daniels the last couple of weeks. He's been doing fine. Like, his price is up there, so it's a little bit tough to want to play. But I think if I'm going to get a Terry McLaurin game, Jaden Daniels is going to be a part of it, and I want Malik Neighbors coming back. I think this could be one of those spots where both sides could go off on a few spots, a few specific plays.
And that's the thing. It's a good total for a Giants game, right? Like, when you're talking about the New York Giants, you see a 45-point total. Like, I'm not going to scoff at it. Usually, they're always low 40s or high 30s and stuff if it's a bad game environment. But to me, it's not going to be. And I'm with you. The reason why Daniels, pass rate, especially to McLaurin's targets being down, is just because they usually win. Even last week, they were up for the majority of that game, and that's why they didn't really chuck the ball much against Chicago. And the fact that they pulled that game out, I think, showed a lot of grit. Obviously, a Hail Mary doing that will help, but this is a game where I don't know if it's a Zach Ertz game, but when there's a game where the Commanders are going to go down, I want Zach Ertz because Daniels trusts him more than anyone to get on these really short patterns, right? 5-10 yards, and it's going to take a trailing game script for Zach Ertz, man. It's not this week, but I'm going to be incredibly bullish on Zach Ertz once they're an underdog. And I thought we would see that more against, wasn't it the Ravens they played? It wasn't exactly the case there, but I just know maybe in the future. Right now it's Neighbors one, and then I'm with you, McLaurin, Daniels there too. I don't mind a small game stack there. Anything else you guys want to add on to this game, or shall we move on to the electric matchup of Harbaugh taking on the Cleveland Browns? That is Jim Harbaugh. The Chargers taking on the Browns here. It's a very close game. Jameis Winston has revived this Browns offense. I say this, Cedric Tillman, he balls out. It was great at Tennessee. He was kind of buried on the depth chart a little bit last year until the end of the season. Then Amari Cooper gets traded, and look, you're seeing it. 12 targets a couple weeks ago. Last week goes off for 99 yards and 2 scores. He is very chalky on this slate, Drew. 17% ownership. All right. He's the only Cleveland Brown in double-digit ownership in this game, right? You see why the running back situation's murky. You don't really want to deal with Elijah Moore or even a guy like Jerry Jeudy. David Njoku's not as popular as he was last week. But the Chargers, this is where it always confuses me a little bit. I love the Chargers. I've stacked them up a million times, and I got them all in best ball. However, I can't see myself spending up $7K for J.K. Dobbins. I can't see myself paying $5.6K for Ladd McConkey when he hasn't had a double-digit target performance yet. Talk to me. Am I right to be lower on the Chargers this week, despite Herbert's price tag only being $5,300?
I will be. I was hoping one of you guys might be able to talk me onto. I feel like it's a little bit of recency bias. Dobbins has been kind of chalk the last couple slates, and even with him being chalk, he's getting jammed in. So I'm a little bit slighted there. So I do like the Cleveland side. I'll probably have a little bit of J.K. Dobbins mixed in there at 7K. It's just one of those spots that you're going to probably want to get back to a running back in a good position if they have a good game script. But the Cleveland side looks like, Cedric Tillman at 4,300 with Amari Cooper gone is the nuts. And you pair him up with Jameis Winston, it makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, this will be a game where the Cleveland side will have plenty of ways to stack it as well. Elijah Moore looks really good. It'll be relatively popular. I'm curious how popular the stack will be because they're so cheap. If you throw Jameis Winston in there with Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman, you got a lot to work with. So I assume that'll be somewhat popular, more popular than it's showing right now. But I do like that path quite a bit. It opens up the slate a lot. Jameis Winston's been electric. He's done this the last few seasons when he's been, had an opportunity to revive a team, and he slings it, dude. He'll end up being, throwing for 3 touchdowns or something. So The guys are cheap that he's throwing to. A lot of opportunity for these guys to have big games, and then the revive from Jameis Winston actually helps. So I'm very low on the Chargers side. I actually don't even know where to go outside of just plugging J.K. Dobbins in there into a few lineups. Like the other guys, man, I'm not playing Herbert at 5,300. Quentin Johnston, I'm not going to play. So it's just going to be Cleveland, and I think it just opens up the slate. So it's not, it's something I wouldn't steer away from.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland definitely makes more sense than the Chargers here. And I don't mean to diss Chargers because the last 2 weeks, Justin Herbert has played out of his mind. Like he threw for 370 yards with not even Ladd McConkey as the leading receiver. It was like Will Dissly and Jalen Reagor and stuff. Like he is electric when he is actually on. I think he's on. So I don't want to completely ignore it. But at the same time, like, who are you going to click? You got Palmer, you got 4,400 QJ. Ladd McConkey's a little expensive. Like, I'm with you. Snyder, are you on board with the Tillman, Winston stacks? Because I am. I look at this. Like, yeah, Tillman looked so good last week. I bet on him, and I actually laddered him a little bit and stuff. But like, it's electric watching the Browns' offense actually have some life. It just feels way better than the first 8 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think I'm going to actually be under on this game. I think this has the makings of kind of a slower type game. The total's in the low 40s here. The Browns' defense has been pretty good against the run, so I think that takes Dobbins out for me. I know Dobbins probably won't see much ownership this game, right around 10%, I think. But the main decision on this slate basically comes down to Tillman, I think. I think he's going to push 30-35% owned in some of these contests. So, I mean, he makes a lot of sense, but I've been on him the last couple of weeks. I just don't know if I'm going to keep going to him this week. I think I may try and jump off and just hope he doesn't just absolutely nuke me here, but definitely could. He caught that one late long pass from Winston against the Ravens last week. 50, I think it was like a 55-yard touchdown there at the end, right after Kyle Hamilton drops the easiest interception he'll ever get. The very next play, they go right over the top and hit Cedric Tillman. I think I'm going to be off Tillman, though, or at least underweight. Definitely a good cash play. I mean, that's probably the guy you want to start cash games with and such. But I think I'm going to be kind of off this game as a whole. I think Nick Chubb is interesting for like the milli maker. As snaps and carries are going up the last 2 games. Had 16 carries last week, 2 targets in the passing game. So I think he's interesting at 5,800 at basically like no ownership, maybe like 1 to 3% ownership. But I'm kind of off of this game, I think, as a whole.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I can see that with J.K. Dobbins because, look, Monty Vidal is not going to just command a huge role, right? Like, it's going to be Dobbins with his, 15 carries, and he'll get 3 to 4 catches because it's just the way that Greg Roman's offense is really surrounded by J.K. Dobbins, right? Like, he has been getting a million touches every week, and he hasn't been that effective over the last few weeks, but without Gus Edwards there, that the volume is going to be safe. So I kind of get that end a little bit more than the other Chargers receivers potentially, like McConkey. And I'm so glad McConkey went off for 32 fantasy points last week. I don't want to chase that at all, especially if he's going to be double-digit owned. Again, Saber Sim, best time to run those Sims is about 90 minutes before lock or after the inactives come out. If anything surprising happens, that is when the final Sims hit, final ownerships are updated, then you want to run your stuff then. So again, if you think someone's too low owned or too high owned, check back 90 minutes before lock on Saber Sim, and that'll clarify everything. All right, next game, Raiders, Bengals. Big news here. Zach Moss likely to miss out. T. Higgins likely to miss out. And this gives us really mega chalk in this game. But you got Chase Brown is going to be north of 35%. Mike Gesicki is going to be the most popular tight end on the slate. Jacoby Myers is also projected for double-digit ownership, along with Jamar Chase and Brock Bowers. We know what the Bengals games offer, Snyder, right? They've been absolute great times for the other team usually. The Eagles put up 37 points. They got there with Hurts, tush pushing his way. What was it, 2 or 3 touchdowns last week? Saquon Barkley was fed a little bit as well. Like, what you're going to get into. And I don't know if the Bengals can stop the Raiders, even though Gardner Minshew, being the quarterback and stuff. But I do know one thing. Gesicki is the number 2 guy behind Chase when Higgins is out. Like, Yoshabas, goes out wide, but then all of a sudden you have Gesicki stepping into the slot. Last week was not a fluke. And I think that Gesicki is really good chalk as far as a punt tight end goes. So, Snyder, Am I mistaken? Do you think it's a mistake if I start out with my lineups going Chase Brown, Mike Gesicki, and maybe even doing a mini stack where I could throw in a guy like Jacoby Myers, or is that just too chalky?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, I really like Chase Brown in this spot. The Raiders have given up at least 20 points to the RB position in all but one game this year. And the one game they didn't, it was like 17 DK points to the position. And they gave up some big games too. I think Carolina went for like 40 against them as a position early in the season. 41.9 against them early in the season. Pittsburgh Steelers even had 29. Denver had 27 against them. So I think it's a really good spot for Chase Brown. That's some of the chalk I'll definitely be eating here. So I'm really high on Chase Brown this week. Good game script for him too. 7-point home favorite. Love to see that type of stuff there. Yeah, right there with you on Gesicki. When Higgins is out, you see the targets go up for him, and they just basically lean on him kind of as that secondary wide receiver there. I think like the ultimate GPP move would just be playing like Eric All too. Hopefully, maybe he catches a touchdown or something as max leverage to Gesicki there at $400 cheaper. But the price tag is too good there on Mike. And then you got Chase there at 8,600, under 9K for Chase is really good value for his upside. I mean, he's got a 30 ball and a 40 ball in his bag already this year. So we know the upside is definitely there. So I would play him. What's your thoughts on this Jermaine Burton kind of starting to take more snaps? And he got 3 targets last week. So I think he's interesting to look at for like a million maker, but I don't really have much insight on him. Maybe you do more as the Bengals guy, but I'm kind of off of the Raiders in this spot. Mainly it's just Chase Brown and Mike Gesicki here. Maybe some Eric All for max leverage there. And I think this is absolute must-win game for the Bengals here. This is basically with their season riding on the line. Got to go to Baltimore next week, so must-win game for them for sure.
Yeah, on Burton, Josphos, obviously, I honestly thought he'd be better at this point of the season. He's caught a lot of touchdowns, and that's probably been the only main thing. But I do see why Burton's getting more looks, right? Like Burton has a little more ability to separate from his guy than Josphos does, and I think it's interesting. I think if we got word, maybe like that's the thing with Zach Taylor, he's not going to tip his hand, so you'd be like completely firing in the dark and hoping that sticks. But if we did get any inclination of like, oh yeah, that's going to be Burton's week, I can kind of be on board with it. But as of right now, I just think it's like a two-way street in this wide receiver room. Like you're going to have Jamar Chase with the most upside and then Gesicki, and then it's just tiers below everyone else. All right, Drew, Chase Brown, 35%, no Zach Moss. You eating that chalk? Yeah, good point. Great point.
Thank you. Sorry, I got It's shit. So like on my computer, cools down, or at night it cools down or whatever. It takes out the blue light, yeah. So all your shit's all fucked up. So I was like, I can't find it. I can't undo it. So I'm all discombobulated at the moment. But I'll make it super easy. So like I'm certainly fading Las Vegas. The Cincinnati side, I'm right on board with SNYDER. The only thing I'll add though is there's a lot of upside if you have enough salary remaining for Bengals defense to get a couple picks. I think the Bengals defense in this spot is actually pretty good. Minshew's throwing like one interception a game. He's fumbling like 0.75 a game. There's just a lot. And honestly, Cincinnati defense has been pretty good, especially if it's against a weak team. So that's the one kind of, in general, if you can save some salary with defense, it makes a lot of sense. We've had some pretty tight slates this year so far. But looking through the defenses, like if I have, if I try to spend around 3,000, just give or take a couple $100. If I have 3,700 or 3,800 left, I'm looking at the Bengals this week. But yeah, for plays, Chase Brown gonna eat the chalk at 5,900. Gesicki, I'm not as excited to play. I'm totally fine if I have spots for a $3,100 tight end to fill a spot. I'm totally fine with that. But I'm more interested in playing Chase Brown with that chalk than playing Gesicki. They both can go off, but I'm probably just going to do some one-offs. I won't do a lot of stacks with Burrow. And then, like I said, I'll be fading Las Vegas and, in fact, playing more Bengals defense.
Yeah, I like that. And the Bengals defense, despite being, kind of soft in the categories against pass, and run, they do force turnovers at a decent clip. And that's what scores fantasy points, right? Forcing turnovers, getting to the quarterback. Hendrickson, is obviously one of the best pass rushers. And Gardner Minshew is really good at giving the ball to the other team, too. So I do like that route. Let's go on to a total near the 50s, if it's not quite 50. It is the Dolphins and the Bills. So last week, it was good to have Tua back. Tyreek Hill went, off in the first half. I think he had like 74 yards in the first half, 6 for 74, and then nothing in the second half. Like, I don't know if he really got any looks at all in that second half. He's 7,300. He is going to be very chalky again because, look, his props are the best in the slate. His props are the same as Jamar Chase, and he's only 7,300. That was the case I was making last week when I clicked his name, and he did fine. Like, it wasn't like he did horrible, but I was like, why didn't he get looks in the second half? Like, what was up with that, right? A-Chain looked really good last week as well. I think he was the highest Dolphin score last week, 6,700. He's going to be double-digit ownership as well. And then you look at the Bills side of the ball. There's only 2 chalky guys really on the Dolphins. Everyone else is sub 5%, it looks. But Keon Coleman is projected for a little bit of ownership, double-digit ownership at 5,400. Josh Allen is going to be pretty popular as well, 7,700. Drew, when I look at this slate, or look at this game in general, it doesn't look sexy. Like, I'd almost have to be insane to click 5,400 Keon Coleman if he's double-digit owned. Like, that seems ridiculous. You got Amari Cooper in the mix. You got Khalil Shakir. I don't know. It just seems dumb. Am I wrong?
No, I feel the same way. It feels like a trap to me. I honestly don't have a lot to give on this specific game. Like, I've looked at all these slates all season where Buffalo has some really good totals and nothing has popped out. And I'm not even sure anybody's really gone off specifically in any of those games. Josh Allen will take a rushing TD. They'll throw one and do nothing else. And they'll still score 25 points. So, honestly, I have some Keon Coleman at the moment. I don't love it. Like, that would probably be a spot where I don't mind just Xing out most of Buffalo, even with almost a 30-point implied team total, which just seems crazy to me. But that's kind of the way it's shaken out for me on that side. Miami's a little bit different. A-Chain is tough. After a game like last week, it's typically my sign to fade and just see what kind of happens this week. His price isn't so cheap, and we don't even know what the workload's going to be like. Like, they might have scripted him in a little bit more with Tua coming back. That's kind of my take. Tyreek Hill, I would want to play if I'm playing Tua. So, like I said, to be honest, man, this game, I'm not sure if trap's the right word, but it's certainly one of those where I'm going to probably fade and close my eyes and hope it doesn't shoot out. But I just haven't been playing a lot of Buffalo games. And so far, it's been spread out enough, and I really haven't felt it.
Yeah, outside of James Cook, I don't think anyone's really had a ceiling game, right? Like, James Cook had that one Thursday night game against the Dolphins. What was that, like week 3 or week 4, whenever Tua got hurt? And then really, it's been kind of a gross mirage of plays. Like, you don't really get excited about any of the skill positions outside of maybe Cook. And Cook, he's kind of a throwaway at this point. He's been really good this season. Like, I don't want to dismiss Cook for that reason. Like, he has been really good. When he does get the rock, he has been scoring touchdowns at a high clip. I don't like trusting it for 7.2K though. SNYDER does. I'm kind of with Drew here. My only interest is really kind of in Tyreek, kind of in A-Chain, but with the Bills, like, they do like to slow games down. Like, look at last week against Seattle. Now, someone who bet Smith and Jigba's overs and stuff, I was sweating it the entire time because, like, you just don't know when Seattle was going to get that ball back. And I know their defense plays a large role in that, but, like, the Bills would run the ball twice, get a first down, right? Like, get a first down, after on third down yet again and again and again. And it's the same way, like, with the Commanders almost, even though the Commanders' defense is much worse than the Bills. It's just like these games have a tendency to kind of grind to a little bit of a halt, where the Bills have the ball for 8 minutes and a possession. Does that, like, do you have any thought in your mind about A-Chain and Hill, like, potentially not getting there? Like, they're too cheap. They really are, but I don't know if I can trust them against this Bills team.
Yeah, I will say that Tyreek Hill has struggled against this Bills team. Yeah. Looking at the last 6 games, going back to September of 2022, the last 6 matchups, he's been under 82 yards in every single game. So he's kind of struggled against this secondary for whatever reason it is. Hasn't been able to have that spike game that we've seen from him. And if he's going to be that popular, I think I'm going to be under on him and maybe even playing some Waddle as like max leverage against him. But I don't think Hill's going to get too much ownership. I think he could be like 15 to 20% or something like that. But I don't think he's going to be like max ownership here. But I could be wrong. But I actually like some of the guys on the Bills side. I do like James Cook there. He scored 7 touchdowns on the year, coming off the 30 spot last week. I'd had that 28-point game against this team earlier this year. So I think he's interesting for tournaments. Probably under 10%, probably closer to 5%, I think. So I think he's really good for tournaments, large field, 7,200. I like his upside and everything. The Bills are kind of playing more like the Kansas City Chiefs kind of are. They're just trying to grind out games, get the win, get out. Because we haven't seen, like Drew was saying, we haven't seen those big games from Josh Allen. They're just trying to get in and out, get the win, and move on, kind of like Kansas City's been doing. But I think James Cook has some upside for sure. I like him. And then I think I will play a little a chain in this game. We've seen this Bills rush defense get gashed. We saw Derrick Henry break off the long runs. Devin had a big game against him earlier this year as well. I think he had 27 or 28 in that game. He plays really well with Tua, so I think he's interesting to go to here. Coming off a relatively strong game, 3 yards away from the 100-yard bonus last week. Caught 6 balls for 50 yards, 97 on the ground on only 10 carries. So I think the upside for a chain is really large. I like both running backs in this game actually. So, and I think Dalton Kincaid at 5K. At like really low ownership is good for tournaments as well if you want to go there. 7 targets in his last 5 games. So the volume's been there. It just hasn't resulted in much yet.
Yeah, you're right. The volume has been there for Kincaid. It's been frustrating, but it's the same thing. Like you said, like they want to get in and get out. Right? They'll grind a win, or they could be up by 30 because that tends to be the case against the Dolphins last time out, right? Like they were just up by like 28 or whatever, and James Cook got 28 DK in like 3 quarters. It's the only turnoff with the Bills games that I just feel like those games can a little bit grind to a halt. But I'm with you. I do like A-Chain. I think Cook is fine, and then I don't think Tyreek, like you said, it's not max ownership, but he's still going to be like 15, 20%, I think. Right. But if you guys did want to, have to use the restroom or anything like that, well, here's your chance. We got the Patriots and Titans. So go ahead and take your time. Come back in about 2 minutes when we're done talking about this game. The Patriots taking on the Titans here. Tony Pollard is going to play, or there's optimism that Tony Pollard is going to play. I take that as he will. And really, Drake May, he cleared concussion protocol. I expect him to start as well. Look, I mean, outside the Titans defense, and maybe you can make the case for Tony Pollard at 6,800 there. That's fine. But I'm not going to fall for the Calvin Ridley thing. I don't want to chase Calvin Ridley's first quarter where he had 100 yards last week. Snyder, what are you doing with this game?
I think it's mainly the defenses, if anything, for me. Both of these quarterbacks can easily turn the ball over. Both of these defenses are priced at 3K and 3,200, so relatively good prices on them. I think I may even lean the Patriots defense slightly over the Tennessee defense at the discount they bring, but I like some other defenses that are in the 2Ks where I usually like to gravitate towards for my defenses mostly. So kind of just a throwaway game though.
Yeah, it does feel very much like a throwaway game. I mean, I kind of like the case that you made there, just, pivoting to the Patriots defense, because the Titans defense is going to be fairly high, almost 20%. The Patriots defense, despite being 200 less, is going to be like literally less than 2-3% out it looks. Drew, what are you doing with this one?
Yeah, honestly, it's probably just going to be some tight ends in the pool. So I'll probably have some Chig, and he's at 3K, so he's been priced or pretty cheap for a tight end in this game. And then Hunter Henry at 3,900 as well. So those are probably the only 2 plays. The rest of these, I'm not going to chase Calvin Ridley and Mason Rudolph in a 20-point total against New England. So pass.
Yep, and that's the thing. Like I think the only guy I could really be talked on is Tony Pollard, just because if you look at it in a vacuum, they do want to feed him like 100% of the touches almost. And like, that's cool with me at 6,800. And like, we don't know the ownership on him. I think that's going to adjust greatly because right now Sabersim still has Chestnut as one of the top guys because that news hasn't been updated over the last couple hours. But if Pollard is projecting for like under 8% owned, I'd be like very cool with including him in some lineups and stuff and trying to get, to 2 touchdown game from him, right? Like that's what it would take. But yeah, outside of him, defense is really only. I think tight ends, like you said, are just fine as well. Broncos at the Ravens. This is interesting. So SNYDER, I just got to first off say I was wrong about Bo Nix. He's been better than I thought. I'm not ready to admit he's been good, but he's been better than I thought. And here's the chance too. I mean, he's got a chance against a bad secondary in the Baltimore Ravens. The Broncos games have been the hardest for me, Drew, because I don't know what to think of the Broncos. Right? Like on paper, like you look at them, like they're not that bad. And then like when you watch them, like I know I luckily missed the game against the Saints, but like that game just had to be like watching paint dry for the first half there. And like you just see like, have they been just capitalizing on bad teams over the last few weeks, or are they actually good? And really, when you look at this one from a Millie Maker perspective, only the Ravens defense is projected for ownership in this game. Literally, everyone else is going to be single-digit owned. Like, what's your interest at with a team total of over 28 for Baltimore?
Baltimore definitely has more of my interest than Denver. The problem is it's a little bit like the Buffalo side with Lamar Jackson taking a lot of the points away from all of his other players. So it's either Derrick Henry rushing TDs or it's Lamar Jackson throwing short throws or rushing his own TDs. So honestly, this kind of fits into the Buffalo side a little bit. I will say this point total has crept up 2 points since opening on Tuesday. So it's worth looking into. I just don't know if I have a lot of interest. Like Zay Flowers is expensive. Am I going to pair him with Lamar Jackson? It gets pretty expensive. And we talked about some cheaper stacks already. Like Derrick Henry, I guess you could be the expensive guy in some of your lineups. That would be a play, I guess. Otherwise, man, I honestly don't know what I would do with Baltimore because there's I want 30 points from like an old Kansas City team where I can get Kelsey getting there, Tyreek Hill getting there, and Patrick Mahomes getting there. And if I'm going to play a 30-point team total and it's possible maybe only one gets there, I'm just kind of shooting myself in the foot a little bit. So I'm probably going to avoid, overly stacking the Baltimore side. I haven't played a lot of solo QBs, and it's turned out to be pretty profitable this year. So maybe I do a couple Lamar Jackson solo lineups, but otherwise I probably won't play a lot of Denver or Baltimore in this spot, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you say because I've been kind of doing that a little bit more too, and I did it last week with Bo Nix, and it worked out perfectly fine. It worked out perfect, even though I had Tillman and Njoku. It was for my single entry team. I was like, man, who's going to score the ball if it's not Bo Nix, right? And it was Javonte Williams, and that's it. Like Bo Nix is going to be involved in a lot of touchdowns that they score. When they had a really bad defense that they were going against Carolina last week, it made sense. This week, even though I don't really respect the Baltimore defense, they are much better than Carolina and SNYDER. Like let's be honest here. However, I'm going to push back just slightly here against Drew is that I think the Broncos side is slightly better to stack up than Baltimore, and that's stacking up specifically because, like you said, Drew, Lamar solo is definitely something I'm interested in. Or Henry as just one piece. Yeah. With the Denver side, like I don't know, I feel like I can play Knicks with a guy like Cortland Sutton and against this bad secondary, and just hope that the Ravens have still not really improved things on the back end of the defense there, or maybe garbage time, right? Like it's not overly expensive, but that is a price tag of what 13.3 combined. Like that's fine for a QB wide receiver stack. You don't really have to overstack Denver either. SNYDER, what are you doing with this game?
Yeah, it's been really tough with me with these Denver pass catchers. Like last week, leading up to last week, Sean Payton was saying they were going to get Troy Franklin more involved, and his snaps went down, and in the snaps for little Jordan Humphrey went and skyrocketed. So it's hard to tell which of these guys are going to see the most snaps as they're like rotating 5 guys as pass catchers there. So it's kind of tough. I love the upside that Troy Franklin has. I would love to see him out there more. Maybe I sprinkle him into the pool. I'm not sure. I kind of think this is going to be an interesting game. Like I could see Baltimore coming out really strong. Like Denver usually struggles in the first half, so the Ravens can get up big, and then you can see Denver kind of creep back in the second half when Baltimore usually kind of lays over in the second half. So this is a tough game for me to decipher here. Baltimore's got a 4-touchdown implied team total, and it's been Lamar Jackson. He's been like the most consistent quarterback, averaging in the upper to mid high 20s every game this year. And then you got Derrick Henry there as well, 8,300. I'm really hesitant to play them both together, but you've seen them both hit like 25, 28 in the same game, but you haven't really seen both of them like nuke for like 35 plus in the same game. So it's kind of, I think I would maybe play one or the other. I'm really just kind of torn on this game right now. I think I like a Lamar Flowers skinny or Lamar to Andrews or something like that. But this game kind of has me. I really don't have a firm grip on this game. I think Mark Andrews at 4,200 is still a great option. I mean, his targets and snaps are going up. Last week he played a season high 50 snaps, 5 for 36 and 1. Hasn't really put up that big game though. But at 4K, you really don't. I mean, you get 20 points out of him like you put up a couple weeks ago. That'd be just fine, I think.
Yeah, and so, Steven, you're talking about Deontay Johnson. Actually, one of the best bets that Boynton posted into the chat was Deontay Johnson under 8 fantasy points. This was posted yesterday night, I believe. But, yeah, usually, like, when a wide receiver joins midweek, you don't want to chase it that week. Like, snaps are probably going to be really limited. They're still going to trust Bateman at first. SNYDER, you obviously being the Ravens fan.
6,300, yeah.
Yeah, you don't do it this week, right? I hope Deontay Johnson does great moving on. Yeah. I think that'll be a move that benefits him, but not this week. Maybe not even next week. It'll take a little bit of time to integrate into that offense. Here's a quick question, too. Bo Nix solo on the early slate. Is that something you'd be interested in? Either of you playing the early slate?
I think he's fine for the price tag. He's been at 20 points, 3 of the last 4 games or something like that?
Yeah, he's been nuking, too. Like that's the problem is, like, he's been really good for fantasy. It's not just like he's been good for a rookie. No, he's been really good. He's only 5,900. Like, I'm very fine with, playing in that sense.
I can see him having a big second half for sure.
Yeah, and here's another thing, too, just kind of touching on Lamar, what you guys were saying. Like, doesn't it feel like the gap between, average price quarterbacks for like 6K and now they're like almost like 5.5K? Like, it just feels like the price of quarterbacks going down. And so when a guy like Lamar Jackson is 7 or 8K, like, it sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb. And it's becoming very hard for me to spend up at quarterback when, like last week, Bo Nix was mid 5K and you weren't shipping, like, unless you had like the nutted build. Like, you can get all the studs with a guy like Bo Nix in that sense. Like, it's really hard for me to spend up for Lamar Jackson. And that's why he's projecting for super low ownership, is because the median price of quarterbacks feels like it has dipped. And I could be wrong. Yeah. But maybe it's just been the slate structure too. But that's probably a reason like Lamar just becomes more and more unique as the weeks progress. He might have been in the winner last week, Lamar.
I don't know. He was. I think he was.
He was, right?
One of the Millie makers he was. I will say it seems like the expensive QBs though have also had expensive wide receivers, like all of them. Like Zay Flowers, I don't think should be that high priced. And so when you go to stack an expensive QB, and you can't really make it work with another 8,600, an 8K plus wide receiver, it just steers you away from it. So I don't know. The upside seems capped for that combo.
And that's kind of a key point. And was it Lamar naked last week? I do want to check that.
I think it was naked. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I saw Lamar in the winter. I'm like, damn, like they, Bo Nix went off, James Winston went off, and it was still Lamar. Like, you're doing that for raw points, but even then, like, it didn't really net you a ton. Like, you still had to take a chance, and it was specifically about how you built your lineup in that sense, rather than anything else. Like, and that's why, I mean, hell, if you can get the highest scoring quarterback at under 5%, maybe we should be doing that more. And maybe I should be welcoming that.
It was definitely the week before. It might have been last week too, but it definitely was the week before.
Because I didn't play the week before because I was in.
He had 35 points 2 weeks ago and 24 last week. So I'm thinking it
might have been
2 weeks ago, not last week. But
might have been 2 weeks.
The point still stands, dude. He's got 37 points. 25, 27, 25, 30. Like,
he's just stuck. He really is. Maybe.
But no one's getting any contribution from that. That's the problem. Derrick Henry on his own, or it's Lamar Jackson on his own.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build out my main lineups and stuff, and I'm going to what would it take to get Lamar Jackson in this build, and who am I sacrificing? I might treat it like that, where why not play the highest scored quarterback sometimes? But we're going to go into Binking asked question. Who's your favorite running back this week? Either site. Well, it's going to be hard to fade Alvin Kamara against the Carolina Panthers when Alvin Kamara just lost both of his backups. Kendra Miller and Jamal Williams will be missing out. Kendra Miller will be put on IR, so he'll miss the next 4 games, and Jamal Williams is out for this one. And here's the thing with the Carolina Panthers. They're horrible. It's not even the good fun kind of horrible. They're just bad. And this is someone who believed in the Panthers coming into the season, and I really regret that. There's the issue of the defense being really bad, right? Like that's a slight concern, right? Who knows? But the fact that Bryce Young is starting at quarterback and people are like, well, he's young, give him a chance. He started 20 NFL games, like, or what, 19 NFL games. He is one of the worst quarterbacks of all time. Like, this is just a terrible offense.
That's got to be like the lowest QB price I've ever seen for a starting QB.
$4,400 for a starter. And I wouldn't pay $3,000 for him. He's the ranks of a quarterback spot. Like,
you can't stack him.
It's frustrating because I really liked the Panthers coming into the season. Like, man, just get some average quarterback play. Andy Dalton didn't really show that, but it's fine.
He had a couple weeks.
Right? Like, they were serviceable at least. But Bryce Young, none of these guys are serviceable. So when I see a guy like Jalen Coker at 22%, I'm going off on a tangent here.
I will say one thing.
Yes.
Bryce Young did score more points last week than Rattler did the week everybody played him.
He did score 15 fantasy. I got to give you credit. It might have all been he did have a first half touchdown too, a first drive touchdown. Here's my thing against Jalen Coker though. You're paying 22% for a guy who might not even eclipse 150 yards passing, and that's my problem. And I know the Saints secondary is really banged up. If you're going to make the case for Bryce Young or Jalen Coker in this sense, is that Bryce Young is capable of carving up the Saints defense that is missing so many key guys. And that's the only argument I can accept is like maybe the Saints are so injured that Jalen Coker can be fine. But we might have multiple Jaguars out and stuff where you have a direct pivot like Parker Washington, who will still be lower on Jalen Coker, even if that news hits. Snyder, I'm on my spiel. You can tell that I'm not on Jalen Coker, despite liking Jalen Coker in the preseason stuff. I'm not going to click his name here. Alvin Kamara is my favorite running back on the slate. And then outside of that, I don't really mess with this game.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of crazy that you can play a full stack for the same price that you can play Lamar Jackson. you can play the Bryce Young, Jalen Coker stack for $8K, or you can play Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's probably a really good chance that Lamar Jackson.
Dude, Lamar Jackson outscores both of them.
Yeah,
like 80% of the time.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy, but I think I'm going to be definitely overweight on Kamara in this spot. That this is one of those spots. Generally, Kamara plays the best like in the dome, but I don't even think that matters here. I think he can smash in this spot. Just kind of looking to see if he's had it. Yeah, he's had a couple of decent games outside. He had 30 against Jacksonville last year. But yeah, generally he's solid there, but I think this is just too good of a spot. I mean, this Carolina Panthers, over half the games they've netted at least 30 points to the RB position and over 40 a couple of times this year. So I think this is just a great spot for Kamara. I love him there, 7,800. A lot of people are going to go to Chris Olave too. I think it's kind of hard for both of those guys to like hit their ceiling. So I think I'm going to set a rule max 1 just to kind of help differentiate myself. They could both be 25 to 30% plus owned in this spot. They're both like projected to be on the optimal cash team. So definitely going to see a lot of ownership in those two. So I think I'm going to set rule max 1 of Kamara and Olave. That's kind of how I'm going to try to get slightly different on this game at least. I will have Coker in the pool though. 3,600 is just too good, I think, for the projected targets he's going to see there. Did find the end zone last week, 4 for 78 on 6 targets. So I'll have him in the pool. Taysom Hill is interesting. Not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. I think he's definitely in play. I'm trying to get his price there. 3,800. Yeah, I think this is a spot where we can see Taysom Hill get a touchdown or two near the goal line there. With Derek Carr back, but maybe not 100% fully healthy. So maybe they use Taysom in some of those goal line spots or something. But definitely interesting with the Kamara, Olave, and Taysom Hill in this game.
Yeah, and this is the thing, too. Like the Saints side, like I said, I think the Panthers are one of the worst teams. They have not been able to defend the run at all. Alvin Kamara, if you promised me 20 touches, I would bite your hand off for 7,800 here, Drew. What are you doing with him and the rest of this game as well?
Yeah, Snyder's spot on. I think, Alvin Kamara is a no-brainer. I will have some Olave. The max 1 between Kamara and Olave makes a lot of sense. The Taysom Hill thing, I'm always behind. So like I always miss out when Big T calls the Taysom Hill game. So I do think it's important to note with Derek Carr coming back. Like I could just see them, common sense wise, they're inside the 5 or something like that, and they throw a trick play to Taysom Hill instead of Kamara after Kamara's already got 2 touchdowns. So I mean, Taysom Hill makes a lot of sense here. He's 3,800, fills a tight end spot, and he has 2 touchdown upside, maybe more, right? So there's a good bit to like from, a team with a 26-point total, conversely with Baltimore 28.5. There's really not but one player you could play from Baltimore. And I think there's a couple ways you can kind of skin it here with New Orleans. But Kamara is going to be the guy I want to revolve around. And then really quickly on the Coker thing, I mean, same thing. He'll be in the player pool, 3,600. It doesn't take much for him to get there. Like to get to 10 points, it takes a lot for Bryce Young to help him get there. But like, he gets two catches and 50 yards, 3 catches and 50 yards, and he's there. So I want to play some Coker, 3,600. If there's other better pivots, I mean, like I said, it's 3,600. I'm not going to go all in, but and he's certainly not going to be. He's one of those two. Like I have talked a lot about guys that have fringe ceilings, where like maybe they can get there, and you probably want to pair them up with the QB that can get them there. You don't need Bryce Young to get there for Jalen Coker to get there. So, like I said, 3,600, give me 12 points, and I'm pretty happy. It just doesn't take that much. But yeah, New Orleans, 26-point total, 2 points less than 2 other teams on this slate, 2 points less than 3 other teams on this slate, and it's probably the favorite upside spots for anybody.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'll kind of relax my Coker take because 3,600 and it's 40 plus yards on DraftKings Sportsbook is even money. That's fine. That's fine. My thing is ownership wise, 22% is a lot, and he's been getting a lot of buzz, and I've seen that buzz, and I'm just sitting there.
It is
Legette's the main guy though. Like I don't want to forget that Legette is still going to be Bryce Young's number 1 target, and like Thielen's out, Deontay's gone, Mingo sucks. Like, yeah, I mean you do it by like just you just look at how many bodies they have, and yes, it does make sense that Coker's there. I think the ultimate leverage would be Legette, though. He's going to play 5,300. You try and leverage that if you have the extra salary. But at the end of the day, you're playing Coker for the salary savings. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue none of these guys are going to get like 15 plus points, and they're not on the Millie Maker winner anyway. So it might be a moot point anyways. But like I said, just for most builds, you leave them in the player pool and see if it fits. But he might just not have it.
The great thing about the Sims, they know that Coker is 22% unprojected, right? Like if he's in your lineup, that means that they finagled it to where like, look, it's optimal that he's in your lineup for that reason.
Yeah.
That's why I love Saberson. Let's move on to the Cowboys and Falcons. This game is really popular. We got 5 guys, and this isn't the burger chain, and double-digit ownership. We got CeeDee Lamb, 22%, Drake London, 21, Bijan, 19, Ferguson, 18, and Dak Prescott is one of the higher-owned quarterbacks of the week at 6,300. Zeke is not going to be with the team. He's going to be inactive for disciplinary reasons. I wonder why. Overnight in Atlanta, what did he do? But I mean, this is an interesting game because CeeDee Lamb looked great last time out. Man, he ended up nuking that second half. And I know that they were playing from behind and they had to catch up against the 49ers and stuff. But is that a sign of things to come? Do you like CeeDee Lamb more than any other receiver? Because look, he's high owned. Jamar Chase is high owned. Who would you rather have between the two?
I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb.
I think
CeeDee Lamb's the guy. We talked through some cheaper stacks, and I think there's generally speaking, that you can get up to CeeDee Lamb fairly comfortably and still be able to pay up for like Kamara. So I think CeeDee Lamb would be the guy that I would play over Chase in that spot. So I think CeeDee Lamb 8,800 is probably the number 1 side from Dallas. Pairing up with Dak Prescott, you can. I mean, he has a pretty good projection. I don't think you necessarily need him. Like, CeeDee Lamb needs a big game to get there. Dak Prescott doesn't always do it, though. Like, he can do it from touchdowns and not a lot of passing yards. So I'm not afraid of playing CeeDee Lamb solo. I do have some Jake Ferguson, but 5,100, there's some better values at tight end, but I don't hate it. Like, if you want to play Dak Prescott with those 2 guys, is probably the way that I would plug it. But Atlanta has a 2-point total 2-point team total better. This entire game has gone up, I think, 4 points since the open. So, like, this is worth targeting both sides on. I think Atlanta is going to be a little bit more popular. The prices are a little bit more tame. So like Drake London at 6,700 makes a lot of sense. Bijan Robinson at 7,400 makes a lot of sense as well. So I don't know. I probably won't do many Kirk Cousins stacks. He has been good for the last couple of games. He's had some pretty good passing games. What was the one he had 370 yards or something like that? Like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, but yeah, I do like the Bijan Robinson and Drake London side. I'll probably sprinkle in some Kyle Pitts as well at tight end. But other than that, man, I think it's CeeDee Lamb from the Dallas side, and just hope he has all the workload. And if you want to stack him up with Prescott, that's fine. You can pair him with Ferguson as well. Then the Atlanta side, I don't care if I run it back. I just want both sides. If they're running it back with a few receivers, that's fine. I think both sides can get there. I don't necessarily have to run it back.
Oh yeah,
I agree.
Oh really? Yeah, that's a good point.
First order of business. I was going to go to you, Snyder. My bad. That's 2 of us. We're just now. You got to do it, Snyder, for the full trifecta. Sam, welcome to the site. First thing first, hit the Discord button. Link your Discord into our channel there on Run Pure Sports, and you'll have access to the chat. It's probably the best part about Run Pure Sports is the Discord being able to chat sports whenever you want. Ask guys like Snyder and Drew questions about what they think of the slate, as well as the millions of bets that get dropped in every day. And it was some fun sweats that we had today. I know that Minnesota, we had the quarterback, we had Brosner and Daniel Jackson. I had their overs on. They hit that on like the last drive of their of the game there for Minnesota. And that was a lot of fun. That's why I just like you guys throwing in those pick sixes. I don't have access to pick six, but I'm able to kind of do those in the sportsbook too. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of content in the Discord specifically. Snyder, now it's your turn to talk about the Cowboys and Falcons, a great game to target.
Yeah, we're starting to see that CeeDee Lamb come back from last year. That we saw 31 targets over the last 2 games. CD is back to just force feeding CD there, as they're like basically in must-win situation. Also, their season is quickly falling away from them. They've lost 4 of their last 6 games now. Rough times there. They're 3-point underdogs. The line's kind of moving towards the Falcons too. As we've seen Dak kind of struggle out of division against some of these out of division teams and such. I think Lamb's a great play, though. The ownership's definitely going to be there. I think it's going to get steamed up too as the tomorrow goes on. I think it's only going to go up a little more. He's a great option, though. I'm not sure I'm going to have to wait and see how much ownership follows, like the Rico Dowdle news. If he gets steamed up a little bit, I think I'll just jam Chase Brown over him. I like Chase Brown's matchup a lot better, so I think I'll probably be under on Rico or right around the field probably. I do like Bijan, though. I think Bijan's going to be the guy that could potentially get squeezed a little. I don't know. He should still probably see 15-20% ownership probably, though. I mean, he's finally putting it together. 3 straight games, over 23 DK points. The volume's there on the ground and through the air as well, so I like him. Drake London's a guy I've been playing every single week. Kind of burned me last week a little bit. Did not do much last week. Was the first game he was under 13 points, I think, on the season. Only caught 4 for 34. I'll go back to Drake London, though, in this spot, 6,700. The volume has been there all year besides last week. I think Darnell Mooney is like the Millie Maker play, though, if you want to run something back. I think the ceiling for Mooney is elite in this spot. 6K, probably a third the ownership of what Drake London is going to be too. So he's like the Millie Maker play I really like on this side. And Kyle Pitts, I played Kyle Pitts last week. I'll have to see what his ownership's really going to do. I think it's right around 10 right now. You're starting to see, Kirk Cousins has been finding him. It's good volume the last 5-6 games. So he's definitely in play for me at 4,900, just off talent alone. That's still a really good price tag on him. I don't think he's going to hit 25 again, but wouldn't surprise me if he went for like 6 for 70 and 1 or something like that and got you near 20. So I think he's fine. I'm kind of a little under. I think I'm going to take the under in this game, though, as a whole, though. You see totals over 50 this year. I think they're hitting the under at like a 65% clip. So might just be a shade to the under on this game.
Yeah, it makes sense there. I'm with you guys. CeeDee Lamb's my number one guy. I actually really like the Darnell Mooney one because whenever you watch the Falcons, they've been on primetime a little bit this year. It doesn't feel like the gap between Mooney and London is very large, right? Like it feels like Mooney gets into space, is more capable of these like huge plays, and London's a little bit more reliable, big body target. But like when I see Darnell Mooney, it just feels like his upside is very much the same as London, if not higher. And we've seen those huge games from him already. I like that call a lot, Snyder. We know what this Cowboys defense is, getting beat up on. They were beat up on a big play last week by Debo, and they were killed by Kittle as well. Like, I don't know. I think this game is just fine overall. I'm going to let these pieces come to me. I think CeeDee Lamb's the only guy who would kind of be like one of the first clicks, into a team and kind of see where it takes you. Because look, if I end up with 2 or 3 guys from this game, I'm very happy. But at the very least, I'm okay. I really kind of want to have one, and whether that's Bijan, like you said, it gets a slight squeeze. Maybe we've talked about how Alvin Kamara is one of the more popular plays. We already talked about Chase Brown, Brad Moore. I am very, very high on Chase Brown. Without Zach Moss, like it should be Chase Brown's backfield. Like it just should. Like if you're gonna guarantee me 15 to 20 touches against the Raiders, like I gotta take it. And I also think Chase Brown is just very talented as well. I think he's twice the player of Zach Moss in terms of just running the ball. But yeah, this game overall, I'm high on. For sake of time, we'll go to the Bears and Cardinals. Caleb Williams disappointed me last week greatly. And I know that Eberflus also didn't really do all that well, coaching the ball, trying to hand it off to a damn lineman on, first and goal instead of just giving the ball to Roschon or DeAndre Swift. But losing that game to the Commanders and looking as bad as he did, I think, didn't he only have 3 completions through the first 3 quarters? Is that what it was for Caleb Williams?
I think so. I played him last week.
Yeah. See that? Like I like going against Commanders, and this week they're giving a team total, a little over 21. Like they're implying like 3 touchdowns, you'd think. And I can't get that vision out of my head. They were just horrible. DeAndre Swift is fine chalk, 6,400, 15% ownership is what it's projected about. The thing with DeAndre Swift is that he was the actual and only bell cow, it felt like, in that backfield. Like, Roschon didn't get a carry until the 4th quarter. And I think that's just terrible coaching. Eberflus does have his inconsistencies at times. But one thing's for sure, DeAndre Swift is the number one guy by a lot there. And he's going to get fed the ball 15, 20 times against the Cardinals defense here. I think that's fine chalk. Snyder, when I look at these receivers, it's always tough to pinpoint which one's going to do well for the Bears. Caleb Williams is 6,100. I mean, that's tournaments only, I would imagine, right? Like Millie Maker build. Like, are you interested in the Bears? And then talk about the Cardinals as well.
Yeah, I think this is like an under the radar, like could be a shootout here. We saw what Caleb Williams was doing before that bye week. Maybe he came out of that bye week a little rusty. It looked like in that first half for sure. I mean, at Carolina and Jacksonville, those 2 games, he looked great in those 2 games. Had 6 touchdowns combined in those 2 games. Comes out and lays a total egg last week. I'll go back to some Caleb Williams here at 6,100. The Cardinals defense has been giving up a bunch of points to both running backs and the receivers. They've given up 40 plus 3 times to the RB position this year, in some big games to receivers as well this year. So I'm going to buy back in on the Bears here. I think this game is a sneaky shootout. So I'm going to be heavy on I like Caleb Williams. I kind of like Roma Dunze, some under 5K as well. I think he's got the most upside. He had 6 targets last week. Hasn't really done anything the last few weeks, but back in week 2, he had that big game, 100-plus yards and a touchdown, put up 26 points. I think he's due for some solid progression going forward. So I like some Roma Dunze under 5K. I played DJ Moore last week. That was definitely a dud there. Potentially could go back to him. My favorite piece on the Cardinals side, I think it's going to be James Conner at 6,600. I think that's a nice, solid mid-range price tag for him. He's been pretty consistent this year, too. A few games over 100 yards, 19, 20, 19, 18. Rushes in 4 of his last 5 games. He's seen some work in the pass game, too. So I think James Conner at 6,600, whereas Swift could see a little more ownership than him, I think, or probably right around about the same, actually. I think Swift's fine for me too. The Cardinals have given up those big games to running backs, like I said, so I kind of like both teams, some pieces on both teams, both running backs. I like Caleb Williams to bounce back in the spot as well.
Yeah, I don't mind the bounce back there. I mean, it definitely would make sense because, like you said, they were cooking before the bye week, and then last week was just complete and utter failure in every sense, especially the coaching staff. When you have a guy celebrating as the Hail Mary is getting ran, that is just wild. Drew, James Conner is the leader of how the hell did he get 20 fantasy points this season? Because every time I look up, like he's always got a good projection, and then you're just tracking the game. You're like, oh man, James Conner has like 4 catches for 40 yards. A touchdown, and then he's got like 90 yards rushing. Like I don't know how he does it, but every single week he's there at the end of the day. When Snyder says he likes him, I'm like, I can't really push back on that. Like I've said guys like Swift and Pollard and stuff, he profiles the same as that. He's going to get work. He's going to get his touches, and at the end of the day, 17% or not, like he's just fine. Like what are you doing with a guy like that? And I also want you to touch on McBride a little bit because every single week McBride feels like he gets a little bit of buzz, and then every single week he's been a failure. And it's not his fault. I think Petzing is not very good, but that's the conversation for another time.
Yeah. If you click anybody at the top of any leaderboard the last couple of weeks, James Conner has been in their flex every week, and I haven't learned yet. But he's fine. I will say I'm probably just going to die on this hill tomorrow with these cheap stacks. But like Chicago and Arizona both have cheap stacks that are very viable in my opinion. I think James Conner's fine. Talking about Trey McBride, I think Kyler Murray has the passing upside. I'm not sure about yardage wise. I think he's only gone over 300 yards once this season, but he's gotten like one rushing touchdown and one passing touchdown in almost every single game this season. I want to pair him with Trey McBride. I think Kyler Murray's cheap enough to make it viable with Trey McBride for both his passing. You get a TD upside and you get rushing upside. And then you pair him with Marvin Harrison or Michael Wilson. Both are still pretty cheap. Marvin Harrison obviously is $2K more expensive. But for a team with almost 24-point team total, the QB side is always probably the most important part of the stack. So I want Kyler Murray's upside with Trey McBride and then pairing it with Marvin Harrison or Michael Wilson. If I play some James Conner, I don't hate it. He's had a little bit of receiving game, but I'm afraid that probably eats into Kyler Murray's upside a bit. So I'll probably just try to stick with stacks and then James Conner as an aside. As far as Chicago, I'll be real quick. I think this is just a good bounce back spot. Honestly, I was staying with Snyder last week, played a bunch of DJ Moore. He sucks. The entire offense sucked. You might as well go back to some Caleb Williams with DJ Moore, Caleb Williams with Keenan Allen, and see what happens. They're all going to be sub 10%, if not lower. So I like this. I like this game a lot, and I like stacking up both sides. I think there's a lot of upside for pretty good value. That's probably the gist of it.
Yeah, I like that case you made there. For the sake of time, I just got to keep trudging through. We're going to talk about the Jags and Eagles now. So, Drew, the big news here, Christian Kirk out for the year. You have the status of Brian Thomas up in the air, Gabe Davis, slightly up in the air. Tank Bigsby looks like he'll give it a go. Travis Etienne, we don't really know. This is a game where you want to attack the Eagles secondary usually. Trevor Lawrence might not have a ton of options, but the one guy I'm really looking forward to, if we get word of Brian Thomas potentially being out, even if they are in, I am very high on Parker Washington. And the ownership doesn't reflect it yet. And I do think if one of those guys were rolled out, it would skyrocket. But he was very effective, at times last season. Like I think when Christian Kirk, had that injury in that in a primetime spot last season, Parker Washington ended up going off in that game. And then like this, last game he just played, he did really well. He is actually my favorite value wide receiver if one of Davis or Brian Thomas miss. And that might be a little bit off the board because, look, this Jags offense has not implied very many points. They're implied the same amount as the Jaguars almost as things currently stand. But I want to attack the Eagles with that, with that mindset. And then also on the Eagles side of the ball, look, Saquon's a little bit chalky at 14%. That's fine. We know he's going to get fed the ball. You just hope he doesn't land inside the 1 yard line or else Jalen Hurts will steal the glory. But we know how bad the Jaguars secondary has been this year. And A.J. Brown is also projecting for not a ton of ownership at all. This is a game where it's like almost sneaky that I feel like I could have a 3-man stack where maybe I go, Parker Washington, Engram, in that sense, and then run it back with like A.J. Brown where I could go Trevor Lawrence if I want, but like it feels like a very sneaky game. What do you think?
I mean, it's going to have a lot of value open up. Where you go from there is tough, and I'll probably lean on your expertise from some of these guys coming up from school, like Parker Washington versus Tim Jones. Like, where do you prioritize that? I think Evan Ingram as the known commodity makes the most sense. 5,300 is still pretty cheap, and honestly, if you've got a bunch of newer receivers that may not know all the plays just yet, or you're not going to trust them just yet, Evan Ingram's going to be the guy that's going to get the bulk of the workload. We've seen that time and time again with guys moving into a role that they're not really ready for just yet. You just kind of lean on your veterans a bit. So I think Evan Ingram's just a clear-cut number one play from the Jacksonville side. As far as values go, I mean, I don't know. Parker Washington, like I said, I'll lean on you, and then Tim Jones at 3,100, I assume would take some amount of snaps. I think he had 27 snaps last game. So there's just going to be a lot of potential for value. I just don't know where exactly the workload would go. It could get spread out, or it could be one guy that gets all of it as a guy moving up. I'm not really sure what they're going to do. So that's kind of my play right now is Evan Ingram's in there. I'll wait till tomorrow morning and see if we have any, updated news on where we think the workload's going to kind of materialize, I guess. So, and Philadelphia side, AJ Brown, 8,100. It's still pretty cheap for the volume and the upside he has. 27-point team total makes a lot of sense. I probably don't get up to Saquon Barkley. I got him quite a bit right now in Saber Sim, but I'm not sure I'm going to do that with 8,200. And I have other guys with more upside. So, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like Jalen Hurts, you could eat. Like I try to stack Jalen Hurts. He's like a Lamar Jackson light. But for sake of time, like I said, I'll wait till tomorrow for the Jacksonville stuff. In Philadelphia, most of these guys are in play. I'm not sure I'm going to do a lot of stacks, but like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, they're all in play for a 27-point team total.
Yeah, very much so. And Christian, I will say this: the Eagles' defense over the last 3 weeks has really been very stout, right? Like I keep thinking back to that damn Bucs game, and like what we saw last season and stuff too. But they did look really good in the second half against the Bengals specifically. And like I don't know which one I believe, but that's why like I'm not like overly excited to jam in Trevor Lawrence. I don't think I'm gonna do that, but I will definitely have a lot of Parker Washington if one of those guys is out. And like Drew, it's Parker Washington. I am like waiting for his props to be posted, and I'm going to bash the living hell out of them. Like it's going to be one of my favorite props of the week. Snyder, what are you doing with this game? Obviously, these last 3 games are pretty decent, but this one, like it just feels like it's flying a little under the radar with the way the ownership sets up.
Yeah, definitely. I actually really like the Eagles in this side. I think we see another Eagles just beat down here. A couple of them, since they've come out of the bye week, they've had 3 straight wins and a couple big wins the last 2 weeks. I think that's just a rough spot for Jacksonville coming into Philadelphia here. I think Philly just rolls these guys over. I think we could see like a 38-10 type game in this spot. So I really like Philadelphia. Just pour one on them. Jalen Hurts is probably my favorite spend-up quarterback this week, maybe even higher than Lamar. He's had 5 rushing touchdowns the last 2 weeks, so if they get close. And Saquon doesn't care. I mean, he didn't care about getting that rushing record, so he really isn't going to matter about this. They just keep jamming Jalen like they did when they had that success in years past. So I think Saquon 8,200, that's a little steep. I think I'd rather play Derrick Henry in that spot, but I really like I really like Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown in this spot. I think A.J. Brown will get squeezed. I think his ownership will be really low as everybody's looking to play CD right above him. If you can find that Chiefs stack, I mean, it sounds horrible, but if you can find like that Carolina stack for 8K, jam CD Lamb, jam A.J. Brown, jam Henry, or just jam like 3 8K guys in, I think that's some validity to that. If those two, if they can get like 30 combined in that stack, I think you could be at some massive upside. But I'm high on AJ Brown and Hurts in this game. I think the Philadelphia Eagles at 3,100 is really strong as well.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Brad. Like I think AJ Brown comes in a little higher than 5%, but like Snyder just said, like look, you can get a big stack, and I don't think they're going to be high end at all. Like I think AJ Brown gets squeezed a little bit, and I do think people are going to prefer Barkley over him. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think the Jags defense is truly one of the worst in the league, and it is yards allowed. They are really bad, and I just think it just it wouldn't surprise me if there was 50 in that game, and it could be 35 from the Eagles and only 17 from the Jags. Like that, it just wouldn't surprise me at all. Very high on that one overall. Rams, Seahawks. This is a very popular game at the top with guys like Kyren Williams and Kenneth Walker, both eclipsing 15, 20% ownership. Tyler Lockett's a little bit chalkier than I would have imagined. Both Lockett and Smith and Jigba did not have impressive props last week, and neither of them got there really against the Bills. Like, and Jigba did fine. Smith and Jigba did fine, but it wasn't like he did anything else. Snyder, we were having a pre-show talk about AJ Barner being a little bit chalky, around 10% ownership with Fant being out. Geno Smith is also projected for a little bit of ownership, but really it's Kyren and then it's everyone else because, look, people are afraid of that Puka situation after he left practice early, but he looks like he's going to play. People are afraid of the Cup situation. Like, no one wants to touch the Rams outside of Kyren, and then Seattle's missing DK Metcalf, so there's going to be some interest there going against a subpar defense.
Yeah, and they're missing Noah Fant as well, so we got AJ Barner at 2,600. That's going to see quite a bit of ownership for the person at the tight end, probably around like 15%, maybe even a little more if it gets steamed. I've heard his name getting mentioned quite a bit around the industry the last couple of days. I'll probably play him if I played like a Geno JSN. I would probably throw Barner in that stack as well. I think that's fine. I like the Rams from a standpoint to win this game. I like playing Stafford now that he's got both of his weapons back with Kupp and Nakua. I think it sounded like you said Nakua was going to give it a go. It was wild watching that game last week. They said that they were just going to slightly work Nakua in or something like that, and all of a sudden he's just getting every single target right away in that game. 7 catches on 99 targets for 106 yards. 7,200 is a good price tag for him. I think Jake Bobo's in play as well, 3,400. He's going to see a little bit of ownership as well. I like the Rams in this spot, though. I think the Rams are about ready to go on a run now that their team's finally healthy. You can play Stafford under 6K at like literally no ownership, I think. So I think that's a strong tournament piece there, like a Stafford. You could even play a double. It's a little tough playing both of those guys. I think I would even lean to Nakua with the injury looming over him. Hopefully a lot of people go off of that, but as well. And then you got Kyren at 8K. I seem to play Kyren every week just because the workload is so good for him. He's fine if you want to go there as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting game for that reason. Like the uncertainty of the Rams. Like I was in the about to head to the airport and stuff while that game was finishing up. It was just a terrible time when you're overseas 6 hours ahead and like you're waking up as soon as the games are finishing. And like I looked at the Nakua stat line. I'm like, you're kidding me. It was like the beginning of the second half. He was leading receiver and stuff. It clips 100 yards. Like holy cow. And really, Drew, like when you just look at this game in general, like outside the running backs, like I love Jackson Smith and Jigba's talent. I kind of fine with AJ Barner. Like I think you made the good case for it, Snyder. Like you can stack up Geno very cheap, and that's fine if you wanted to include AJ Barner. But Drew, like overall, I mean, it's not a game that really excites me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, honestly. And it's tough. You look at the team totals and you feel like you're missing something if you don't love it. But it's just one of those where it gets spread out pretty good on Seattle's side. It'll be a good scoring game, but it won't be like one or two, offensive players getting most of the production. So it'll be looking for values like Snyder talking about with AJ Barner. Jackson Smith is still, he's not cheap. And I'm not sure I really want to pair him with Geno Smith anyway. So, it'd be probably one-offs to be completely honest. The Rams side, it's a little bit easier. I think Kyren Williams and Cooper Kupp are just like the two targets. If there's any value that opens up with Puka, then I'll look that way. But like I think Kyren at 8K, he's been a staple all season. I'm not afraid of that. And then Cooper Kupp at 7,700 is fine. I probably won't stack them too much with Matthew Stafford. I would want like one other receiver. If there's like a cheap receiver that projects decent, then maybe I look that way. But as of now, it's just going to be a one-off with both Kyren Williams and Cooper Kupp, wherever I can fit them.
Yeah, makes sense there. And Kenneth Walker is a guy that I love him a lot, like as a player and stuff. And I'm just sitting there like they suck at running the ball, and it's definitely not his fault. But it's just like tilting when they bash it in behind the line of scrimmage and lose 2 yards and then just reset the drive. I do think the coaching staff really wants to be able to run the football. It's just a talent issue that just doesn't allow them to. And it's just like the offensive line pushing back. I just hope that, maybe they just land the first punch and Kenneth Walker's able to get going. And, I'm going to have a little bit of him tomorrow without a doubt. All right, last game of the day, weather issues, as you pointed out earlier, Snyder. This one kind of has a little bit of weather going into Green Bay, rain and wind, as you said at the top of the show. Snyder, I'm going to start with you on this one because, look, it's not a very popular game overall. And this kind of shocks you, right? Because usually Lions games are very popular. However, when the Lions put up 31 or however many points they had before, they only had like 28 pass yards. It was just absurd, right? Like, the Lions have the ability to spread it to like 8 different dudes, and their special teams is on point last week and stuff. And then you look at the Packers, it's the same thing. I mean, really, like Jordan Love, if he's even healthy enough to give it a go, he can throw it to 6 guys. And Josh Jacobs is really the only security there. It makes sense that this game's low owned, and it's also weather related. Again, despite the total, it doesn't feel great.
Yeah, I think this is a good regression spot for the Lions, actually, getting Goff outside the dome. He's only going to play one game outside of a dome in the first 14 weeks of the season, which is kind of crazy. I bet the Packers earlier in the week at +3.5. I put it in the Discord, but I did just think this is a spot where the Lions kind of see some regression come back to them after just a blazing start to the season. Get Goff outside the dome. He's missing Jamison Williams. He's in the Lions defense is missing Hutchinson. I think that's going to be really highlighted this week. But with the forecast for this, with potentially heavy rainfall, I think this could be like kind of a slog game where, like, I think the Lions will lean on Montgomery more in this game. He's more of the bruiser. I think getting outside of the dome and stuff kind of hurts Gibbs a little bit. He's more shifty, mobile. He's got the quick burst out of the runs early and catching the ball in the backfield. But I'll probably be off Gibbs this week. I think I'll play some Montgomery, 6,500. I think he's fine. I think Josh Jacobs is fine in this spot. It'll be interesting to see if it sounds like Jordan Love's going to go for sure. It sounds like now reports. But, I mean, Malik Willis, he's actually not been bad. I mean, the run game's actually been better with Malik Willis in the game. So I wouldn't even be worried if Malik Willis played in this spot. But I really don't like too much in this game with the total it has. You would think there'd be some really good spots. But I think I'd rather play some of those other receivers over. I'd rather play like A.J. Brown over St. Brown. I'd rather play CeeDee Lamb over St. Brown. I think Romeo Doubs is a fine option. He does better against man as well. Reed's usually better versus zone, so I think Doubs in this spot is better. Some of those quicker passes, I think he kind of fits the mold. But yeah, I think I may even go to the Packers defense in this spot. We've seen the Packers defense be good, 2,700. It's a good price tag. I like targeting those defenses under 3K, and the Packers defense has put up 10+ points 4 times this year, including a 20-spot one game. They've been getting to the quarterback sacks-wise, causing fumbles and interceptions. So if the Detroit offense is going to kind of regress, I want to be on the Packers defense as well.
Yeah, and this is a funny thing, our guy Kevin O'Peterson, he really loved the AP's outfit on Halloween, the Kevin O'Connell special. That was funny. But yeah, it's really one of Detroit's only outdoor games, funny enough. And Drew, like, I can't really even begin to see, like, who would I even target, like, from a skill position wise, like Brad, or who is it? Brad, you mentioned it. Christian Watson's 5K. Like, I always love playing Christian Watson. It's just like the volume just isn't there for him, right? Like, it's always tough. But he is a guy who, like, it would not shock me if he had 18 fantasy points on just 2 catches, right? Like, that's a play I can kind of get behind for a million maker. But overall, Drew, like, it's gross. Like, I don't know who I'd click, and I don't really want to stack it up at all.
Yeah, it's not quite low enough owned to be like, really looking for edges in this game if it's going to be pretty sloppy. Like, Josh Jacobs would be the play in the vacuum, but if he doesn't play, then maybe there's some value running backs you can look to with Chris Brooks or I forget the other one, Emmanuel Wilson, I think it is. So yeah, that's probably the only opportunities I would look to. I don't want to look at stuff in the air. The total itself seems fishy to me, but what do I know? But I don't know. Just like if it's going to play slow, and it's going to be, they were talking about 15 to 30 mile per hour gusts and sloppy. Like, I feel like getting to a 50-point team total or a 50-point game total is might not get there. Yeah. So we'll see. I will take Snyder's point. Like I was looking at Gibbs, but maybe Montgomery's the better back to put in there for Detroit. So otherwise, I don't think I'm going to play much in the air game. It'll be, trying to pinpoint if there's a running back. And honestly, they're not even must play. Like you could probably be, assuming the weather holds, and there's a lot of, questions around some of these players' status tomorrow. You probably can X out this game and, just hold on to the Millie Maker as this game finishes.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. All right, guys, you know the drill. All right, you got to find me a sub 8% guy that we can throw into our lineups for tomorrow. And I will say we can do it injury related. You can see where I'm getting at. I already picked my guy. we can do it a little bit injury related, so that way if someone misses, they can become viable there. But yeah, again, sub 8% in the Millie Maker using SaberSim's ownership as of right now. If it is vetoed by both guys of the show, you have to do it again because we do have that problem when I pick a guy who's 20% owned and you guys veto it.
It only happened once. I
think maybe twice. Maybe it's happened more times than once, but you guys just called me out on it once.
That's true. Yeah.
So, all right, who's the most prepared right now? Snyder looks like he's grinding his computer. Drew, you look the same way. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to start with Snyder, though. Snyder's going to be the first one. But first, sign up, run for your sports code, RPS15, 15% off your first purchase here. And we'd be happy to help you for NFL Sunday. NBA is awesome. MLB just ended, but we also have NHL and every other sport in between. College basketball starts Monday as well. Steve Boynton, Captain, grinding out of that. Snyder, sub 8% Millie Maker play of the day.
Does A.J. Brown?
Yes.
Does that fit the credentials? Yeah, I'm going to go with A.J. Brown then to 8,100. I think I love the Eagles offense as a whole in this spot. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. I think A.J. Brown goes for 100-plus yards and 2 touchdowns.
All right, perfect. I love it. A.J. Brown, I do think he comes just slightly under that. If the delta's 2%. If he comes in above 10%, you got to do 10 push-ups on the show. Drew, sub 8% play of the day.
Yeah, mine's Kyler Murray from the QB spot. Yeah, I think he's got the upside, guys. In a really good game on both sides. But yeah, Kyler Murray.
I like it. All right, so Kyler Murray, A.J. Brown, and if someone misses, I actually don't think he gets up to 8%. I do think there's a lot of ambiguity with him, and I think it's Parker Washington. And if Brian Thomas is out, which I don't know, the trend seems to be either direction. Even if Brian Thomas is in, I'm going to sprinkle some Parker Washington. Yeah. I genuinely think that he is going to fill the Christian Kirk role. Has that role been good this year? No. But I do think for 3,600, it's great leverage off great pivot off a guy like Jalen Coker, someone who has shown talent, someone that Trevor Lawrence has thrown the ball to a decent bit, toward the end of last season, and then at times like last game. Very high on Parker Washington to get the job done. Yes, thank you all for joining us. Taysom Hill, that'll be big tease tomorrow, I bet. No, we'll have a lot of fun. Don't forget to catch the show. You have the free show at 10, as well as the Up the Lock on the Run for Your Sports website. Again, thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of y'all's day, and good luck. Hopefully that one of us is a Millie Maker winner tomorrow, or maybe it's one of y'all. Bye-bye.